Dr. Suzanne Bechtel here again, and this excellent vid is covering Appendix 1 and 5 primarily. However, she does go into some other excellent observations on using Appendix 4 for citing finding citations from. Anyway, this is a really good video. Thank you.
So here we have our list of periodicals, okay? So let's take a look. Number 12 says, you can find a case in the United States Supreme Court Reporters, Lawyers Edition, 2nd series. So which is the correct abbreviation for that particular reporter? So what you're going to do is go to Appendix 5, which is in the handout since it's not in your book anymore. And you're literally going to look it up by alphabetical. All right, so I'm going to scroll all the way down because it's in the U's. Going. All right, U's. Okay, so here I'm on page 46 of Appendix 5. And it says United States Supreme Court Reports Lawyers Edition. So let's look for United States Supreme Court Reports. And guess what's not in there? It's not under United States. Okay, there is a United States, which tells you that it's US, but it does not have Lawyers Edition, 2nd series. So if you don't find it exactly like that, then let's look at Lawyers Edition. So let's go back up to the L's. I'm sorry if this makes you dizzy. You can close your eyes. So let's look if it's under Lawyers Edition. So I'm in the L's. There's Lawyers Reports annotated, but there's no Lawyers Edition. Okay, so here is another trick if you cannot find it here. All right, so if you can't find it in Appendix 5, I'm going to show you a shortcut. Let me look up Appendix 1. Let me pull that one up on my screen. Is everyone on Appendix 1? All right. So in Appendix 1, remember how I said federal comes first? So we're in Appendix 1A. And the reason why I know I need to go to federal, because the name that's listed here says United States Supreme Court, right? And then we're looking for Lawyers Edition 2nd series. So Appendix 1, the way Appendix 1 is set up is if you look under the table is laid out with the highest court first, and then it goes down to all the smaller courts. So if you're looking on page 418, we're looking in section 1A for federal because we're in federal court. And we're also looking at the the United States Supreme Court reports. So the lovely thing about Appendix 1 is it's a shortcut to everything. So we're looking for the reporter, and guess what? If you're looking at that first section of the table, you've got there your list of all the reporters. So if you ever want to find a case in the from the US Supreme Court, you can actually find it in these 4 different sections. So there's US reports, there's Supreme Court reporter, and lo and behold, there's the United States Supreme Court Reports Lawyers Edition. So if you don't find it in Appendix 5, look back here in Appendix 1. Okay, so here we have the 4 different reporters, the 4 different reporters, sorry, wish I could turn that off. These are the 4 different reporters that you have there, okay? And if you notice, there's a star. So the star tells you it's a official reporter, meaning if you want to cite something in court, you better find it in the place where there is that big star. That's the one that you want to refer to in your document. And then they have this little circle there too, which is the preferred resource. So normally we would be citing only to this. All right, but this question has to do with this source down here, which is the United States Supreme Court reports. And then it says, particularly it wants the second series. So here's where you're going to find that one. And the reason why I love this appendix is it automatically tells you how to abbreviate the source with the spaces and everything. Okay, so when we're talking about journals or reporters, you'll be flip-flopping between this appendix and Appendix 5. But because Appendix 1 is such a great resource, I would always start there first. If you can't find it here, then you jump over to the Appendix 5.
That's where I found it.
Yeah, perfect. And so what is the answer for number 12?
D.
D as in dog. Perfect. Does everybody see how it's got it right here written for you? And the reason why there's a second series on certain reporters, once they reach a certain number of books, then they start second series so that they can start with book number 1 all over again. So here, the United States Supreme Court reports, if you look, the first edition has cases from 1790 to 1956. That's a long time. That's a century and a half worth of cases. So they're like, you know what? We need to start back from book number 1. So then anything from 1956 on to right now is in the second series. That's a lot of cases. Okay. So maybe in the century and a half from 1956, we'll be getting into the third series. But this column here on the right will tell you what year the cases are in here. So here's another good one, the Federal Reporter. This is for the US Supreme Court of Appeals. So the Federal Reporter has the first series, second series, and third series. So if I'm looking for a case from 1976, which series number is it going to be located?
Second series?
Yeah, second series. Because here it's 1976 would fall into that date range, which would be Florida Federal Reporter second series. But what's lovely is you don't have to worry about the rules that you learned in rule number 2, because the abbreviations are already here for you, exactly how you need to plug them in. Isn't that lovely? Yeah, perfect. All right. So let's look at number 13. So here we're trying to find a case from the Federal Reporter 3rd series. So which is the correct abbreviation?
B.
Yeah, does everybody agree with B? All right, and that is correct. Okay, so we know that A is wrong because in Appendix 1A, it doesn't have the space between the F and the third. Okay, so that would be wrong. A would be wrong. B would be correct. C is wrong because it has the R that we haven't learned that rule yet, but we take out that R. And then D is wrong because even though it's got the third, which has the R, it's also superscript where the letters get really small and it pops it up to the top. We're going to learn a different rule that says that that one is wrong. But strictly by looking at Appendix 1, you already know B is the correct answer. So that's great. Okay. All right. So here's another little trick I'm going to teach you about Appendix 1. The next question talks about the Georgia Supreme Court case, and they want the court abbreviation. Okay. So using Appendix 1, knowing that federal, the way it's laid out is federal is first and then state is second, and then it's abbreviated. Let's go ahead and find Georgia. And then when you find the state, it starts off with the Supreme Court, and then it goes down to the Court of Appeals, and then it goes into your statute citations. It's located right here. We haven't gotten into the citations yet for statutes, but it's here. Everything is right here. Okay. It even goes into session laws, administrative compilations, and then administrative registers. Okay. But under each court level, you've got the at the end, you actually have the citation, the abbreviation for that particular court. Okay. So remember how we had jumped over to Appendix 4? If you can't find it here, you can jump to Appendix 4 and it's got all the court abbreviations in there for you. But the majority of them are right here in Appendix 1, along with the reporters. So you don't have to go very far to find things, okay? So the question in 14 is asking for the court abbreviation for the Florida Supreme Court. So what is our abbreviation?
D.
D, okay.
D.
Everybody agrees with D? Perfect, because we found it right here, okay, at the end of that Supreme Court. So if I had used instead Appendix 4, you're going to reach the right answer still. And let me show you why. So that is page 494. So remember, I told you everything is abbreviated. Okay, starting with the federal courts first, but here we're talking about the Georgia Supreme Court. So we know we're not in federal. We have to go to 4B for the state. Okay, so we're going to go to 4B. And then we're going to go to Georgia Supreme Court, and there it is. GA period. So you can find it in two different places, but Appendix 1 is usually where all your stuff is. So you can strictly use Appendix 1 if necessary. All right, so I'm going to let you do 15 on your own, which is you're citing the Massachusetts Superior Court case. So what is the abbreviation for the reporter?
C.
All right, we have a C. Does everybody agree with C? All right. So the way we found that is if you go to Appendix 1, page 444, we're looking at our different levels. So here is a funny thing about Massachusetts. Their Supreme Court is called the Supreme Judicial Court, and their lower court is called Superior Court. Why would you call it superior if it's an inferior court? That's how they do it in that state. But the lovely thing is it shows you everything. So it shows you all the levels, and they've got actually multiple levels. So we're looking for the Superior Court, which is this one down here. And then lo and behold, here is our reporter. So it's Mass L RPTR period. Yeah, so C is the correct answer. Does anybody have any questions on how we found that? Okay, so let's jump over 16. I'm going to let you do that one on your own. 17 is federal. So it's asking you to cite the statute from the United States Code annotated. So what is the abbreviation? So using Appendix 1, we know we're in federal court.
Would be
So we're
C, because the
which one?
C, because you just use the letters with the you don't spell it out.
Exactly. So we're in Appendix 1A for federal. You're going to scroll down to where it talks about the statutes. Which is towards the bottom. All right, so we're on page 4. Sorry, I'm on the wrong page here. Let me go back. Page 420. And the statutes are actually at the very bottom of page 420. So here it's telling us that we're looking for United States Code annotated, which is the second one in that section. And it's telling us on the right-hand side is USCA. And because it's all individual letters, single letters, we separate them by periods and lump them all together, because that's what rule number 2 told us. But we don't have to worry about knowing the rule because it tells us right here how to abbreviate it. All right. Now, here's a tricky question. Is the United States Code annotated the official reporter?
No, wouldn't it be just the United States Code?
Exactly. Because the one that has the star is the official reporter. So United States Code is the one that we have to quote to in documents that we're going to submit to the court. Very good. That was a tricky question. All right. So let's jump over to number 19. So here we're talking about an article, a periodical. Okay, it's called the Notre Dame Journal of Law, Ethics, and Public Policy. So here we're going to start in, I'm actually going to jump over to that screen real quick. We're going to jump into Appendix 5, which is in the handout.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Are all journal of laws called periodicals?
Yes and no. And they lump them together under periodicals, but it could be a journal, it could be called something else. It just depends on what name they chose. But anything that's not a good rule of thumb would be anything that's not a reporter, for sure you're going to find it in Appendix 5. Sometimes there's, like for Florida, we have the Florida Law Weekly. You would think it's a periodical, but you would actually find that in Appendix 1 as well. Because sometimes our cases are cited in there. So it just depends. You're going to flow between Appendix 1 and Appendix 5, usually. Okay. All right, so let's jump over to Appendix 5. All right, and we're looking for Notre Dame Journal of Law, Ethics, and Public Policy. All right, so we're looking at the bottom of page 34. And then we've got our publication right here. All right, so here you've got the abbreviation that you need. Now, let's say, for example, you couldn't find it, something in Appendix 1 or Appendix 5. It's maybe a new periodical that hasn't been reported on here yet. The way that you would have dealt with it, like Notre Dame would be not abbreviated because it's not in our appendix in the back. And then you would take the rest of the publication abbreviations and look at Appendix 3 and see which words you could actually abbreviate according to Appendix 3. It's like you would have seen Journal of Law would have been abbreviated, public would have been abbreviated, and policy would have been abbreviated. So you could have gone that route, but Appendix 5 is faster. You know, look it up. If it's not in there, then you know you have to go into Appendix 3 to abbreviate things. Any questions on that?